focusing on right now is coming in from Israel. Today happens to be the 29th day of assault since the day one of that October 7 horrific assault, the surprise attack that was launched by Hamas fighters on Israel. And now, as we speak, there are more and more calls for ceasefire growing across the world. The latest addition coming in from Palestinian president, who has said that it is an important move that needs to be made right now to avoid thousands of deaths that are taking place on Gaza Strip. Remember, Gaza is under a blockade. Fuel, food supplies, other essential supplies have all been locked down. Only limited supplies are allowed inside Gaza Strip by Israel. But even as some humanitarian corridors are being opened by Israeli forces, the civilians are not getting any respite. Why is that? Because visuals that have been released by IDF now show that Hamas terrorists have been launching attacks on the latest humanitarian corridors that have been opened to allow the civilians to move away from the areas that have been under attack. The visuals on your screen are from the north-south corridor in Gaza. The military had announced the opening of Salah al-Din route for 3 hours to let civilians move away from conflict zones. But Israel has alleged that mortars and anti-tank missiles were fired on that route, preventing Gazans from escaping.
מבחינתנו התחיל פה מעבר אוכלוסייה עבור. הקטנה, אני חושב שירו עליי, קטנה. ירי של RPG, אני חושב מכיוון הרצועה. מבחינתנו התחיל פה מעבר אוכלוסייה עבור. הקטנה, אני חושב שירו עליי, קטנה. ירי של RPG, אני חושב מכיוון הרצועה.
Hamas, as a terror organization, has an operational strategy and also a civil humanitarian strategy. And Hamas is trying to use every civil infrastructure, every humanitarian infrastructure, even the UN infrastructure, in order to promote their goals. And this corridor that we tried to open today was for the civilians that do not want to be a part of these clashes between us and Hamas ISIS, to evacuate from the north to the south, like we declared, and try to convince them to move to the north, to the south, sorry. So in order for them to use those civilians, they attacked one of our posts in order to maintain their presence in the north.
Now, as Israeli Defense Forces deepen their ground offensive in Gaza, engaging in firefights with gunmen inside the enclave while continuing to carry out airstrikes on Hamas targets, Defense Minister Yoav Gallant has said that Israel was taking apart Hamas battalion after battalion and would eliminate terror groups. Gaza Chief Yahya Sinwar, in fact, in a very significant announcement, he said that while they are ready for a long and tough war, this could be shortened if the civilians of Gaza could take out the civilians of Gaza could take out the Hamas chief.
The Hamas organization knows no borders. The residents of Israel saw this on October 7th, when they saw the severe murders, the abuse, the brutality, the atrocities, the rape and the kidnappings. The heads of Hamas are responsible for this. We will reach them. We will reach Yahya Sinwar and eliminate him. I say from here to the residents of Gaza, if you get him before us, it will shorten the war.
My colleague Pradeep Datta gets us a ground report.
What really happened on that particular day?
מה בדיוק קרה ביום הזה?
הגיעו לפה מחבלים.
Terrorists came here.
ואני הייתי פה למעלה, התחלתי להגיע מפה, ויריתי על מחבל פה.
He came from upstairs and he shot a terrorist right here.
ומפה התחלנו את הגיע ההרג בעצם, של המחבלים. השתלטו לנו על התחנת משטרה.
They took over the terrorists over the police station, so from here all the people that come back from Sderot start to shoot from here. To kill them.
הצלחנו להציל שתי ילדות קטנות.
In the process they saving 2 young girls.
How difficult was the situation? What kind of weapon they were carrying with them? How many men were there?
כמה אנשים היו, כמה קשה זה היה, ואיזה נשק היה להם.
היה להם את כל הנשקים שאתה רוצה, מג, RPG, מקח, רימונים, מטענים.
There are all kinds of weapons, mug, bombs, grenades, all kind of.
How many Hamas terrorists were here in that Serot area at that time?
כמה טרוריסטים היו פה?
בין 30 ל-40.
Between 30 and 40 terrorists,
40.
Hamas. Yeah.
So, despite being injured, you kept fighting.
למרות שהיית פצוע, אתה המשכת להילחם.
כן, הייתי פצוע, המשכתי להילחם. ראיתי לנגד עיניי את הילדות הקטנות.
So what is it?
He kept on fighting, and he saw in front of his eyes those two kids, and that he needs to be saved. So he saved the kids.
So what is more important is that for him, he did not think about himself. He took the bullets on his body because he saw there were two kids and they were trying to target innocent unarmed civilians. That's one of the reasons that he decided that somehow he has to save those kids, just to save lives of the kids. Let me show you. This is the spot. Exactly. This is the place where actually the kids were there. He came out to this place. He just tried to save those kids. During the process, he took the bullet on his body, but he was able to finally save their lives. And this narrates the story of valor. This narrates the story of grit. This narrates the story of determination. And that's what exactly has helped people of Israel.
Joining me on the broadcast is Eli Kamen, a senior researcher, International Institute for Counter-Terrorism and Reichman University in Israel, and Adam Scott Bellos, CEO of Israel Innovation Fund. My apologies in advance, gentlemen, if I've got the pronunciations wrong. Please feel free to correct me. But as we speak, it is day 29 of Israel versus Hamas war. Do you think now, with increasing chorus for ceasefire, it is the right time to go for one?
So, I mean, this is really the beginning of the Israel-Iran war more than it is the Israel-Hamas war, given the fact that we're fighting multiple proxies of Iran. So, of the Islamic Republic of Iran, not the people of Iran. Let's just make that very clear. I do not see any ceasefire happening anytime soon without the return of our hostages. If no hostages are returned, there is no ceasefire. There was a ceasefire on October 6th. It was broken by Hamas when they perpetrated such a great crime against humanity, killing and raping 1,400 people and taking more than 240 people hostage. If they were serious about a ceasefire, they would return every single one of our hostages without question. So, no, I don't see this wrapping up anytime soon.
Mr. Kamen, we've heard even Hamas spokespersons on television, when they give interviews, they say, okay, we want a ceasefire, but it will only be from the side of Israel. We, on our part, will continue to attack them. How then can common grounds be reached? And all those calls for world must come to support, call for humanitarian corridors, how do they hold water then when Hamas only wants a one-sided ceasefire?
First of all, there is humanitarian support for southern Gaza through Egypt, and the Americans are involved also in this corridor. What we speak is the human corridor that we wanted to open between the northern Gaza, which is under our military activity, and the southern Gaza. But Hamas has tried to keep the human, the personnel, the civilians as shields, and they begin to bomb this passage. And also we know that they executed several people which tried to pout to the south. Now, about the ceasefire, there is no intention at all by Israel to accept any ceasefire. The only possibility there is to make a short pause in the military activity on the condition that this is a part of the exchange of or liberation of hostages. And this will be a very short period one. They tried, for instance, to ask for 5 days in order to arrange a kind of liberation, and they don't say exactly how many people will be liberated, who will be liberated. So for the moment, Israel is continuing its operation, and the international community, especially the United States, Egypt, Qatar, There was even talk about some Lebanese element trying to engage in mediation. For the moment, there is no, I think, at least for the moment, there is no any possibility of a ceasefire, or not ceasefire, but to stop the operation in order to exchange information about the prisoners.
Okay.
The kidnapped is not prisoners, the kidnapped civilians.
But when it comes to there are some very disturbing reports also coming in that an average Gazan is forced to survive on 2 pieces of bread every day. Does that mean, Mr. Bellos, that this human cost of this war is now piling up enough for Israel and probably the whole world to probably consider some sort of a respite for them?
I didn't understand the question. I didn't understand the question. What was the question?
When would be the right time for a ceasefire?
The right time for a ceasefire will be when we have all of our hostages back and Hamas is completely eliminated. It's absolutely heartbreaking to see what's going on coming out of Gaza, but it's also very clear that Hamas is targeting its own civilians. They're clearly engaged in a double war crime, not only against the Israeli people and the Jewish people globally, but also their own people. And it's very clear that the radical Islamic goal of liberating Palestine is more important than saving their own people and protecting their own people. We can see this by the fact that we know that certain areas have been warned to evacuate. Hamas is forcing these people to stay. They've shot and killed mothers grieving over the dead bodies as they blame Hamas for these crimes against humanity and keeping the Gazan people there. And not only that, let's just go back to Egypt just for a second for the southern border. For weeks, they wouldn't even open the border to the Palestinians that needed to escape. Without an escape route and with a genocidal, apocalyptic government that's killing people in order to bring a death toll higher to create international world pressure on Israel to accept a ceasefire right now, not only is it failing on deaf ears over in Israel, but it's failing on deaf ears internationally because everybody knows that Israel will not accept a ceasefire. It doesn't matter how much international pressure is put on us right now. If you have seen the footage from October the 7th and understand the carnage and veracity these attacks were made with, okay, and how disgusting this really was, okay, how disgusting this really was, how they indiscriminately raped women, held whole families hostage and murdered them in front of each other, how they celebrated the victory of killing fathers on top of their children with Coca-Cola. Okay, you would understand why the idea of a ceasefire is the most ridiculous thing that could ever be proposed to the Israeli people. And let me just add, no superpower at all would ever be accepting or even entertaining the idea of a ceasefire if this had happened to the United States, Great Britain, France, Germany, or India, Russia, or China. Very important, okay? Very important. Last point. Mm-hmm. There is a genocide in Gaza. It is being committed by Hamas. There was an attempted genocide in Israel committed by Hamas. The only thing the international community needs to understand is that this radical government, this radical Islamic element, is a threat to all things decent that was declared as the Declaration of Man in France in the 1780s. Okay? This is, as horrible as this sounds, this is a fight of good versus evil. Either you are on the side of people who are responding to the threat of genocide, or you are on the side of people who chop up babies, who murder families, who rape and bind and burn women, and who commit genocide against their own people. To me, it is a very clear-cut black and white situation right now. Trying to even bring in the gray is irresponsible. And let me just say again, if you have not seen the images of October the 7th, that would be the only reason why you're calling for a ceasefire.
But Mr. Kaman, Egyptian finance minister has actually said that Israeli offensive is a collective punishment, not self-defense. Is the collateral damage worth the final outcome? Collateral damage in terms of civilians?
It's not punishment, it's not self-defense. There is a decision of the government that we have to destroy completely the military power of Hamas. We don't accept any solution that will not neutralize completely the power of Hamas, which, by the way, is a dictatorial government in its own territory. In Gaza, there were no elections from 2006 to 2023. Every person which is opposed to Hamas, especially people from the Palestinian Authority, Fatah, or leftists or human rights, they are put in jail or even assassinated. So Hamas has to be destroyed militarily. We don't destroy the ideology of Hamas. And we also have to see the leadership, which today, by the way, is in Qatar. You see 4 or 5 of the leaders, political leaders of Hamas and former military leaders are in Qatar. I don't understand why the Qataris are not putting in jail or expelling these leaders. By the way, Turkey has expelled the so-called Secretary General of Hamas, Ismail Haniyeh, because they understood, although they attacked Israel, President Erdogan attacking Israel, but understood that they are a liability because these people in Istanbul were looking on the praying for the massacres of civilians in Israel.
All right. As we talk about the price that is being paid by Gaza and Israel in this war, there are also bigger fallouts of it. In the latest, we've seen several threats flying to and fro. The latest one coming in from Iran, who is said to be behind a lot of these proxy groups like Sir had earlier mentioned. And Iran is now saying that US will be hit hard if no ceasefire takes place in Gaza. What could this probably mean? Will we see the Houthis, the Hezbollah now coming in with bigger force, Mr. Bellos?
We would probably see...
So, Mr. Bellos first, and then we'll come to you, Mr. Kamen. Yes.
We would probably see U.S. bases attacked in Iraq, most likely. That is the easiest target for the Iranians right now. I do not know what the situation is with their intercontinental ballistic missiles, or I have not recently gotten an update on where their nuclear program is at, but I would believe the Iranians when they make a threat. They've been wanting to bring the United States into this to create a more regional war. It's not unrealistic. I mean, we know for a fact that Iran, the Islamic Republic, has attacked multiple bases in Iraq already, and I am sure that the goal of the eschatologically, apocalyptically motivated Ayatollahs are to create a regional war. And I'm sure they're quite upset with the announcement of Nasrallah on Friday, which really just sounded like a lot of ranting and him actually chickening out of this, given how badly Hamas has been pummeled and practically eliminated from the Gaza Strip at this time, which is another reason why people are clamoring for a ceasefire. They see that we're kicking their butt, excuse my language, and that we're doing a very efficient job of exterminating Hamas.
Yes, Mr. Kamen, you wanted to make a point. Please go ahead with that. And after that, yes.
What I think, Iran has a very high and radical rhetoric, but they understand very well that the military presence that President Biden sent to the Gulf and to the Mediterranean is sent in order to protect the region, not only Israel, also the Sunni countries, Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, Bahrain, against any aggression from Iran. Therefore, by the way, they decided not to involve Hezbollah because they understand that if they involve Hezbollah and Israel, perhaps together with the United States, destroys the military missile force of Hezbollah, which is the main tool of the Iranians in the region, then this tool will be not helpful for Tehran when there will be the problem of attacking their nuclear facilities. So you see that they are using the proxies. They use the Houthis in Yemen. They use Iraqi pro-Shia or pro-Iranian militias, by the way, which threatened Jordan yesterday. And I think the Minister of Defense of Jordan has said, if you want to arrive in Jordan, you will be destroyed in your way. The only thing that we see practically is trying to bomb American bases in southern Syria and northern Syria and a bit in Iraq. And for the moment, the United States is responding to this attack. So for the moment, I think there is a tension. There is a possibility of enlarging the regional conflict, but Tehran understands that they have a lot of stakes to lose.
Now, there are some in the Israeli forces who say that there never was any doubt that we can crush Hamas any time. Mr. Bellos, do you think now with Hezbollah joining forces, that is going to be the real and bigger tension for Israel and a bigger threat to tackle? And can it tackle the 3H threat now that it is facing from multiple fronts?
I think that in 1967, we destroyed 5 Arab armies or 6 Arab armies in less than 6 days. I don't think that... I don't worry by any means whatsoever for what the Israeli army can accomplish in terms of defending the Jewish people in the land of Israel. I think that's very obvious based on the job that the very efficient, methodical, careful job that we are doing in Gaza. I do not think that Hezbollah wants this war now that they've seen what we're able to do. And I think that before the southern theater is closed, I do not think before the southern theater war theater of Gaza is closed, the northern front will really be opened in a major way. I think that the northern front will be opened, but I don't think it'll be until we've completely, or at least finished the majority of the job in Gaza. If this were to become a complete trifrontal southern, western, northern front war, a 3-front war, I think we could handle it. I think our army is large enough to handle it. I think we've mobilized 150% of the people that we need. And I see no reason to think that the competency of the IDF is not above that of our enemies.
Right, that's all the time, unfortunately, that we have in this broadcast. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us with your insights. But the most unequivocal word right now on the issue of ceasefire has come from U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, even as he battles a push for ceasefire from the Arab world. He has said that it could be counterproductive. Listen in.
It's our view that a ceasefire now would simply leave Hamas in place, able to regroup and repeat what it did on October 7th.